Welcome to the Redhead Reveal podcast. I am Jenn Pinkerton, your Redhead host, a psychotherapist, writer, speaker, the private practice owner of Pinkerton Psychotherapy, and a connection expert. I help people reveal their connectedness within their relationships and sexuality, understanding root causes of beliefs and behaviors that hold them back from success, and assist them to returning to the person that they are born to be before they were limited by trauma, societal or social concerns, or attachment wounds. Redhead Reveal is here to share concerns and questions, provide interviews with thought leaders and friends, and to hold space to discuss life struggles and encourage vulnerability, authenticity, growth, and self-awareness. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Today I'm really excited to introduce my guest, Janet Fugate. She's written this amazing book about finding bliss beyond the buzz. And I was really excited to get introduced with Janet with some other mutual friends in our self-help mental health community. Janet is a registered nurse, a life coach, an author, and she has so much to offer us. I'm really excited about kind of turning this over. Why don't you give us a little idea about your background and what you bring to the table before we dive in more on the book?
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Jen. What an opportunity. So my background is that I'm a nurse, and you start to think about your background. You start thinking, now how far back do I go? But I'm a registered nurse, and I've worked in healthcare for many years in a lot of high level positions, and I've always tried to mentor and coach and try to get the people in the right places in the corporation, build quality teams and those kind of things. So in the pandemic, when it hit and I lost that job, my second grandbaby was coming, I was like, you know what, I'm ready to do something different. And I trained as a coach, and I think it kind of was a good fit. So trying to mentor and help people. So I think that was a pretty good fit. So that's the abbreviated version of my background.
Absolutely. As I was looking at the book, I could tell that this was really kind of a very much tell-all for you about your life experience that you've had and your recovery and the way that you got to where you are with your personal journey. And I was reading some of the reviews, and there were a lot of people that were just so excited about how vulnerable you were and how much of you that you shared. I think you even had some clients that were there propping you up in that way. And that's so nice to hear that you've got this great following that really has followed you, I guess, along this journey. How long of a journey was it for you to get to the place of where you started experiencing all this to get to the point to publish this book?
Wow, I think it's been a long time coming. So if, as the book kind of describes, it is kind of my life story, kind of an abbreviated version of what happened, the highlights, the lowlights, all the things in between. But, I think when you start to look at publishing a book, you think about what's important, what would impact someone, and what would people relate with. And unfortunately, so many of us have trauma in our past. We have, picked wrong relationships. We've developed habits that have been unhealthy. We've done things, we've lost people we've loved. I had a bout with cancer. We've had a lot of things in our lives. But if you look, it really does make us who we are today. So you have to kind of almost look back at your beginning to figure out where you are now. I think my self-development journey probably started after I left my toxic relationship, my marriage, because then I started just trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted and what was life about. I had been in a pretty oppressive situation where I just kind of did what I was, supposed to do. Right. And it was the first time in a long time that I had to ask myself, okay, well, this is what I've been doing, but what do I really want to do? What do I like? Who's Janet? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's how I began that self-development journey. But the alcohol was there to kind of also medicate and help me cope with some of the, difficulties, the traumas and the PSTD and the grief and all the things that went along with it. So you kind of cope the best way you can. And so I guess I've been alcohol free for almost 5 years now. And I think it was when I finally got that out of the way that my self-development journey really kicked up a notch. That's when I began looking at the things that I was doing and saying to myself, is this really where I want to be? Is this what's important in my life? What am I going to do? Because I think a lot of times we say that it's our family, it's our health. These are things that are important to us. But then we live in a way where we don't see our family, we don't spend time with our friends, and we're not taking care of ourselves. So I had to kind of stop and say, maybe it was time to start taking care of myself.
You know, you mentioned trauma, and I personally view addiction and problems struggling with using other things to cope, these maladaptive coping mechanisms, as really so connected to trauma. I look at, we experience things, these emotional wounds that we often go just repressed and we don't acknowledge them, and they are just showing up right and left in every part of our lives. And I think that that's such a key part of being able to get to a place of sobriety, whether it is sobriety you're searching for, or whether it's just clarity on how you show up in all your relationships. How much of that trauma did you uncover, did you search for in yourself to understand, how that exacerbated or contributed to these maladaptive coping skills that you were using?
I think therapy was something that I definitely did, and if you read the book, I had an early taste of it when I was in my teens. Even I had, when my dad left, my mom didn't take it very well, and there was a lot of it was a really, really rough time. And so I reacted strongly emotionally and didn't know why. And that's why I ended up at the therapist's office. And it was that taste of, hey, here's what it is. You're having an anxiety attack. This is why. Let's walk through it. This is how you handle it. That taste of therapy and having that relationship with that therapist probably saved me, because as an adult, when it happened years later, I thought, oh my goodness, I know what to do. I need to go get some help. And I started taking classes. I started reading self-help books. I went to my therapist. I did the things that I needed to do to figure out how to move forward.
And I imagine now you've been able to take all that experience, and it helps you so much with your life coaching clients that you see, that you probably, I would imagine, have a large client base that's based for people with the same presenting concerns, because you're able to really offer them such a personal viewpoint and glimpse of your experiences and how it has shaped you.
I think that's the one thing I love so much about what I do, because people gravitate towards people that they feel understand them. People who, not only have been there in some sense of the word, but have gotten past it and have made the changes necessary. I have so many women who come and they don't even realize that, what it is that they want. They see, they resonate with some part of my story, and I know that's what gets them there. But then when we drill down on what is it that you want out of life, they've never even asked the question.
And it is a big question. What do we want out of life? What are we here for? And what are we going to do with the life we're given? Right. As I was looking at some of the points in the book too, I felt like I saw so much of their vulnerability. And I think that is so important for us to be able to own that and to sit in that place, because we have to be able to be authentic, to then be vulnerable, to then ever achieve true connection with other people. Otherwise, we're not ever showing up as our true selves. What do you think about that aspect of the vulnerability and how much it played into your healing journey?
It's very scary to become vulnerable, and to put something like this out was very, I think, someone said, Janet, you're courageous. I never thought of myself as courageous, but I understand what they're saying, in that once it's out, it's out. And I know the first version of my book that I wrote was so raw, Jen. It was so filled with, trauma and drama and all that it was not what I could take to the market. And once I reworked and made it a palatable share, then I think that was helpful. But what I realized was that it didn't matter whether someone else knew my truth or not. It was my truth.
Mm-hmm.
And
lived experience.
yes. And only when I began to accept it, that it, this happened to me. It doesn't have to define me. It doesn't have to be, it's not my shame. It's not who I am. Brene Brown was on a podcast, and I had written the book and set it aside for 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a podcast that she did, and she said, someone's got a story out there. Someone's got a book they've written and they won't share it. I thought, oh my goodness, what's happening here? She's
like
talking
to you directly. Mm-hmm.
yeah, like the preacher does or whatever.
Yes.
So I picked it back up and decided to get it out.
You mentioned a point right there about, this is something that happened to you and it's not going to define you. And I really believe that. I feel as though we have this inheritance that we're given. Our life experience growing up, our childhood traumas, our attachment wounds, that's our inheritance. That's what's passed down to us, usually by multi-generational trauma that's gone unresolved. But the thing is that we have all the possibilities to choose what we're going to become. We don't have to accept that inheritance. We can actually say, you know what? I'm going to harness all the power in me and I'm going to be different. I'm going to live differently. The cycle can stop here. Have you felt like that there was a cycle you identified in some way as well?
Yes. And I love what you just said. I mean, I hadn't really ever heard it in those terms and hadn't thought about it as an inheritance, but yeah, the hand that we were dealt, this is what we were dealt. And now we have the choice to pick it up and keep playing the same game with it. And we know how that worked for us. It didn't.
That's right.
Or we can trade in those cards, get new ones, and play with what we have. So yeah, I think definitely my mom was very codependent. And I fell into that same enabling, passive role. And it had to stop with me, and it has. My daughter has a completely different kind of life. So
that's great. I do think that I always want to mention when it comes to those attachment wounds, most parents did the very best they could with what they had. And sometimes what they had was such a limit on self-awareness, such a lack of reflection, such a lack of understanding about how these things contribute to development and contribute to the way we look at ourselves and the identity that we began to adopt, growing up. And I think that it's important to mention that, because I never want to play the blame game with parents. It's not about that. It's simply about, we have an opportunity to do something different. Just like you chose the opportunity to do something different, to embrace this cycle that you were in and change that and experience this sober life in a very different way.
That is so true. And I mean, I had such a close relationship with my mom. It was even hard to write that part of the book. And I had to say, she did, as you just said, she did the very best she could with what she had. And, we have to forgive ourselves as well, because I wasn't the perfect parent that I wanted to be either. I stayed and did things that I wished, looking back, the hindsight, the hindsight's 2020. We all have things that we've said and done to our children that we wish we wouldn't have. We want better for them than we had for ourselves. Mm-hmm. All those cliches, but we have to realize that we did the best with what we had to at the time. Now, that doesn't mean we need to stay there and keep doing it, but to, accept and forgive ourselves and, move forward.
Yeah. And that's the time when you're talking about we don't have to stay there. That's the time we can use our self-reflection. We can decide to level up. We can have a growth mindset. We can look at the world differently and decide that, we have all the power to choose whatever life we want to live. It all is actually within us. But so few people, I think, feel that confidence, that bravery, or the courage, as you mentioned before, to be able to achieve that, to be able to make a choice to go down that path that might seem really scary.
And it's a lot of work. I mean, it's hard. It's not an easy path. It would be right. to acknowledge your issues and to feel the feels without the medicating, without numbing. And I think we tell ourselves things. We are so hard on ourselves, that negative self-talk, that inner critic that just goes on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you have been in a negative relationship and had someone actually say the things that you hear in your head,
Mm-hmm.
it's really tough, because you start, is that him? Is that me? Is it real? Maybe it's reality. Why, I'm no good. I can't do this. And it's not until you address those limiting beliefs and start telling yourself a different story. I mean, that was a game changer for me when I realized that all those things that I kept hearing and thinking, they weren't even true. I was holding on to something. I don't know why. Certainly wasn't serving me. I needed to let it go and tell myself a new story. All the empowering things that, like you mentioned, that, you know what, I am where I am now. Here's what I can do. What am I going to do with the rest of my life?
Exactly. Because that story in our head is so unbelievably powerful. And what's it created on? The narrative that we use, it's usually so far from our actual lived truth. But it's these perceptions and these perspectives and insights that we hold on to so dearly for all the wrong reasons. Usually because it feels safe. It feels safe to stay in that little dark, comfortable spot where we don't have to take any risk. We don't have to stretch ourselves. We don't have to do any emotional work. But when we actually can do that, look at how different life can be. And here you are, somebody to truly express how that's worked out for you.
Yeah, I tell you, I can't even imagine. Sometimes I look back and think about the things that happened in the past, and I think, who is that person? I mean, I am a completely different person today.
Yeah.
And continuing to grow, continuing to learn. And I think that's so exciting. And every client that I have teaches me something.
Absolutely.
Because they all come with their own unique perspective, as you said, and we can learn. We're all different. So it's been really good for me to hear that some of these negative things being reversed, and learning how sometimes it's just absolute power of the will to tell yourself something different when you really don't believe it. But why are we going to the negative instead of the positive? And I think that was like a light bulb moment for me. Something happens, somebody doesn't call you back. Well, immediately, what do you think? Well, they don't like me. I've done something. Okay, maybe it's that they're busy. Maybe something happened with it. Why do we take it on as a negative towards us? And I think just even recognizing some of these defeating behaviors and the negativity towards yourself, you have to become aware. Like you said, so many of us just walk through life for years and years and never even are aware of what we're doing.
Right. We're stuck in that negative feedback loop.
Yeah.
And we can have these cognitive distortions of these distorted and false belief systems about who we are. And they're so far from the truth. You mentioned also in your book about this area of expertise. I think you called it the precons. Am I saying it right? The 7 pillars to healthy life. Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. Precans. Yeah. So it's basically just a little mnemonic.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with it because it's like the 7 pillars. If you can think about these things in your life and kind of just take a look in a broad spectrum of how you're doing in these areas, you will know how you are doing in a healthy lifestyle, in a positive way. And the first one is passion or purpose. So are you living towards your passion or towards your purpose, what you want to do? And that's what we talked about. So many of us don't even know or want or even realize that we have a choice in life. So taking the time to figure out what's important to you and then pursuing it. Rest our mind. It's so shocking in today's society how we just go. And that's so, you're not supposed to take a nap. You're not supposed to meditate. You need to get on this and move, but our body needs a rest. Our mind needs a rest. So taking a rest, whether it's prayer, meditation, exercise, everybody knows you need to have exercise, but that's an area. Moving your body is so important. Connection. Boy, we saw what happened in the pandemic when you can't hug someone, when you can't connect, when you aren't close. So connections, the C. A is alcohol free. Of course, again, that's my little bias there, but I tell you, it's really getting that substance out of your life can make a huge difference. Then nutrition. So what you eat, eating healthy, and then sleep. So those 7 areas. if you were to, I use the mnemonic pre-cans, if you were to just kind of check yourself each day and say, how am I doing in these areas? When they're low and you're not sleeping and you're not eating healthy and you're not exercising and you're not, I mean, that's a direct correlation with how your life's going usually.
And what I like about that is you're giving someone, you're empowering them with a mechanism to check themselves.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier when we have something we can fall back on when we forget, when we get off track, for us to go back and really look, okay, wait, am I taking care of myself? Am I putting myself first? And I like that mnemonic that you came up with, because, if it's not serving you, we got to let it go.
Right. That is so true.
So I want to list some of your socials here. I know you've got this great client base that comes to you, but you also have a lot of activity in social media as far as your YouTube and your Instagram. I want to be sure I mention all that. To be able to find you, it's Bliss Beyond the Buzz, and that's on Facebook and Instagram, and your website, Bliss Beyond the Buzz. What's your YouTube channel? I don't know if I had that on here. I wanted to mention that.
It's Bliss Beyond the Buzz as well.
Right. So people can kind of find you. I want to make sure we stay with that, and people can come back to you and really, order this book, read this book from Amazon. I saw the link and it's available for everybody. I love meeting people that have been on this path of self-development, people that have decided they're going to embrace something new, whether it is the lifestyle change like you did, a career change, whether it's a new path. It's the fact that we always have a chance to reinvent ourselves. We're never stuck. All the power is within us. And we just have to make a decision that we're willing to put forth the effort. We want to do some emotional work. We want to have some transformation, some passion in our life in a different way. And everyone has the capability to do that. And so that's exciting to me. And I love to meet other, writers and authors who feel that way and want to encompass that and share that message with other people, because I think it's really profound.
I think that's probably the theme of my book, is more of, okay, here's what I've been through. Here's where I'm at.
Right.
Here's what I did. Here's what helped me. Yes. Not saying I'm any expert, but maybe it'll help you. And the takeaway, the bottom line, the theme is, if I can do it, you can do it.
Absolutely. I sure appreciate you coming today. I want to end with a question, because I always ask my guests to either answer a question or give us a question that you would ask of the next guest. Is there something that you think would be great to ask someone, some sort of thought that you want to leave someone with? I like to kind of pay it forward and spread that message, either answering or giving your own question. Is there something you can leave us with that might be impactful?
I love that. That's really a great way to end the show. I think I would ask you, are you living the life that you want to live? Mm-hmm. And if not, what are you going to do about it today?
Exactly. I love that. I'll be sure to pass that on to a future guest. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Janet.
Thank you.
Her book, Bliss Beyond the Buzz, From Abuse and Alcohol to Sobriety and Serenity. It's available on Amazon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.